This is the Vets Are Zags podcast. My name is Patrick Piper. I'm an Air Force veteran, Gonzaga alum, and current Gonzaga student. And with me, I have Professor Brian Siebeking, Army veteran, and as I just alluded to, Gonzaga professor. Let's just kind of start off, Brian. Talk about what you teach here at Gonzaga and what you do here, your experience of life at Gonzaga.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Patrick. Thanks for having me. So I teach in the Religious Studies department, and my area is Islamic studies, Christian-Muslim relations, and increasingly I'm doing some research and teaching in the area of religion and ecology. So that's kind of my areas, and been here at Gonzaga for 9 years. This is my 9th year, which is sort of wild. Yeah, I've been loving it. It's a great place to be.
Right on. So you're also an Army veteran, right?
Yeah.
So let's kind of start with, let's actually back up a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your background, where you're from, and what led you to join the Army in the first place.
Yeah. So I'm from Maryland, D.C. area, and I have an uncle who was in the Navy. He went to the Naval Academy in Annapolis. And when I was a young man in high school, he filled my head with ideas of being a plebe. When I look back on it, I mean, it was his influence, I think, to a large extent that kind of got me interested in military service. And I actually did apply to go to the Naval Academy and was waitlisted for a year. But then I kind of thought about it, and I'm like, I don't know if I want that to be my college experience. And so I ended up going instead to a small evangelical Christian college in Pennsylvania called Messiah College. And when I was there, my freshman year, I met a student who was in the reserves, the Army reserves. And he really talked it up, like this is a great opportunity. You get some money for college, right? You get some career training. At the time, I was interested in the legal profession. So I was like, okay, I'll join in the JAG Corps, and I'll get to see what it's like to work with lawyers and see if this is what I wanted to be. And that is not at all what I wanted to be,
Yeah.
So it definitely helped me clarify some things,
Yeah.
Sometimes you do something and you're like, well, yeah, no, that's not me. That's not for me. Yeah. So I did. So that was part of it. But also, I had from my uncle, from some other people in my life, I had a strong sense of service to the country is something that you should aspire to. Right?
Yeah.
And so my freshman year, at the end of my freshman year of college, I convinced my mother that this was okay, and I joined the Army Reserves. Yeah, and so maybe I'll just sort of leave it there, but that was my entry into military service.
So wait a minute, hold on. So you convinced your mother that it was okay, and then you joined.
Yeah.
How old were you at this point?
I was 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was an adult, right? I mean, I didn't actually need her permission, but as a good child, right? You don't want to ideally do something that your mother's not on board with. So
yeah. I mean, my mother died never knowing I smoked cigarettes.
Okay.
I quit years ago, but you know what I mean? It's funny to me because
I don't know if I'd be able to hide this from her though,
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. It's a lot easier when you don't live near your mom to hide that you're a smoker. But yeah, that's funny.
Or in the Army.
Yeah, that sounds like a great sitcom idea, right? Like it's that you're hiding your military service from your family.
Right.
Yeah. So okay. So you're in college at this point. What year if you don't mind me aging you? Like what year did we join the Army?
It was April of 2000.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So on the cusp of a moment, right? So we were all so unaware. Yeah. Okay, so April 2000, we're joining the Army Reserves, interested in the legal profession, and then became what essentially is a paralegal, right?
Paralegal, yeah. 27 Delta.
Okay, and then is that, because I know there's a lot of times in the military where there's a job that's a quarter step below a civilian equivalent. So it's like you're a paralegal in the Army, but you still have a year of school and 9 certifications to actually step into that role in the civilian world. But is that one of those jobs where it's pretty much a seamless transition, if you'd wanted it to be?
To go from being a paralegal in the Army to being a paralegal in the civilian world? That's a good question. I I don't know. I don't really know.
Oh,
Because, very quickly on, I was like, yeah, this is not what I want to be doing. So
Yeah.
I never even pursued the...
yeah.
But now that you asked the question, I do think, I do remember some of my paralegal colleagues in the military that got jobs as a paralegal in the civilian world.
Yeah.
Like right away. So,
Cool.
Yeah. I think there were probably more responsibilities in the military.
I'm sure that.
Yeah.
The UC, once you layer in the
UCMJ,
UCM,
you get training on law of war kind of stuff, and I mean, there's a lot in the area of sort of legal advice
yeah.
that paralegal in the Army and the military gives that I don't think is allowed in the civilian world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of I mean, I had some dealings with. I didn't have a lot of dealings with military law and paralegals, but very similar, like on the medical side, where I did have a lot of dealings where you're getting a procedure done by someone who, like in the civilian world, is woefully like it's like, no, you can't do that. But they have this like more experience than their civilian counterpart in doing it, even though they
definitely, yeah.
That's funny. So okay, so you joined the military. You're going to be this, and you were in the reserves. Where were you? What unit were you in? Where were you?
Okay, I think the unit was called. This is where my memory really gets. I remember the unit I was deployed with very well. I think this was like 378th Corps Support Battalion.
Okay,
where was it located? It was in my college was in it's just south of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And so where was the unit located? I want to say like. He was somewhere near Harrisburg, but I don't remember exactly.
So you were in one of those reserve. It's like at a reserve barracks. You weren't like on an active installation.
That's
it was
right.
Like,
yeah. There's like a building.
Yeah.
That you go to.
Yeah.
And you put your uniform on for the weekend, and you do. I mean, because here's the thing. I was consciously joining the reserves, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have dreams that I was going to be mobilized and deployed. Like I was attracted to the idea of the weekend warrior.
Right.
1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. We were going to, play Army. Yeah. I don't mean that to be insulting.
No,
but and we weren't going to be deployed. I mean, I remember again, this is 2000. The recruiter says to me, when I'm thinking about joining, listen, you are signing up to be a paralegal. You are not going to get deployed to anything. I think the last conflict we had was like Kosovo bombing campaign or something. He's like, it would take the Chinese invading California. That was his exact expression. It was such a weird expression, which is why I remember it. But I also remember thinking, okay, of course. So I'm going to serve. I'm going to do, get some training and stuff. But I wasn't one of those people who was really excited about the possibility of being being deployed in combat. And then, of course, 9/11 happened. I don't know if we're going to get into that. But.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Well, and because that was actually going to be my next question. Because this is the Vets or Zags podcast, right? So the college population, assuming anybody actually listens to this podcast, I don't even know if that weekend warrior idea holds water anymore. Because we've been at war for so long. Right. Because you joined in 2000. Right. And the thing is your recruiter didn't lie to you. Because I mean, that's exactly what it was and what you were signing up to do. My brother was in the Army Reserves in the 90s, like same time, late 90s into, I think he got out about 2000. He was a reservist and did the weekend warrior thing. And it was very much like playing in the woods. And that's how he described it. He was 18. I'm going camping with my uncle was like the message he would leave on his outgoing thing when he left, which now would be an OPSEC violation that you're even going to drill probably. But and then now, but it's 2000. You're in the reserves. You're a paralegal. You know that of course you're never going to deploy, like peacetime Army reserves. And what would it take to mobilize this unit and get the paralegals to deploy? And then of course 9/11 happens and everything changes. So in that moment, though, did you think like, oh, this may now turn real, or did you still think that was?
Yeah. So I was not in the country during 9/11. So I'm still in college at this point, right? And I did a study abroad in Egypt. Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah. So I was studying abroad in Egypt, and I think I was taking a nap or something during the day, and I was woken up by a roommate to to show me the news report that the Twin Towers had been hit and, all this sort of stuff. But I do remember thinking, oh, my unit's going to get mobilized. Like this was a sort of defining thing. Yeah. But it didn't happen. So I had mentioned 9/11 earlier just because like that was a major moment, right, for all of us who sort of lived through it, but also, the first beginnings of thinking that, oh, I could be deployed. Yeah. Right. But I was in Egypt having a grand time exploring, this other culture. The people around me, the Egyptian people, all very, they come up to me like a taxi driver or a shopkeeper would be like, oh, we're so sorry for what happened. There was a lot of sort of support, right, for you as an American. It's one of the things that I think a lot of people, they didn't understand back in the States, right? Yeah. There was a sort of this reaction that was overblown, right, to sort of look at Islam and Muslims, right, as somehow like involved in this, right, in a general way. And that was not at all my experience. Yeah. So I remember coming back to the United States after my study abroad in like December 2001 and seeing like all these American flags everywhere. And my unit is talking in a certain way. And I was like, this was like, what happened? Because my experience of it was an expression of patriotism that was also very much founded in this anger. Right? Yeah, which is not what I had been thinking, Yeah, but so I came back, and my unit was never deployed in the wake of 9/11. I didn't go to Iraq, anything like that. However, just to continue the story a little bit, I was promoted to E5 sergeant. Probably it was in 2002, maybe towards the end of 2002. Yeah. So pretty fast, I kind of moved up through the ranks. And I was, at that point in the JAG Corps, if you're NCO, you can get promoted to or transferred to any kind of battalion, right, which has need of a legal advisor for the battalion commander. So I was promoted and then moved over to a military police unit, the 324th Military Police Battalion, which doesn't exist anymore, but well, it did then. And that's the unit I was deployed with.
Okay. And then where were you deployed? What was your deployment experience like?
Yeah. So 2003, right? And that's when the orders were given, right, the buildup had already been happening, right, around Iraq. Sure. And so my unit was mobilized in February. It was like, actually, we got orders, I think it was February 10th. The reason why I remember it was February 10th, 2003, because that's my brother's birthday. Yeah. And so I remember that date. And we were mobilized. I had to leave school, and then we were sent to Aberdeen Proving Grounds to mobilize, and then deployed to Kuwait. And I believe, if my memory doesn't completely fail me, I think the invasion first happened in March. I want to say it was March. Yep. Yeah. And then my unit moved in quite quickly afterwards in April. Okay. Yeah. So this was I was, again, at this point, I'm part of a military police battalion. Yeah. This unit was tasked with prisoner operations. So that's their training, right? Is that you have it's their sort of mission is thought out in a kind of large scale military operations, right? Where you have combat going on for years, and you have to set up detention facilities for POWs, right, and secure them, but also treat them humanely, and Geneva Conventions and all that, facilitate Red Cross visits, and basically, so how to set up one of these detention operations, right? But the Iraq War, at least the initial combat phase, happened so quickly, right, that they didn't need our unit to do that, and so we entered into Iraq, and then went up to Baghdad, and it seemed like, okay, now this is coming from an E5 at the time, who's not necessarily involved in all the planning and operations.
I was also an E5 in Iraq at the time, so go right ahead.
Okay, so like you see stuff, but you don't always know exactly what's going on. But so I just say this to say that I wasn't privy to all the decisions, but it seemed to me and to many others that there wasn't a plan.
What?
That it wasn't I don't know if there was an expectation that the actual war would go on longer, right, between the soldiers,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the Iraqi military kind of melted away, right? The
Yeah.
soldiers, they sort of just left, right, and went home. And so again, the combat was relatively short, and then it was the occupation phase. And so now
Yeah.
the powers that be are deciding, what do we do with all these people?
Yeah.
So my unit at that point was attached to the 4th Infantry Division's 2nd Combat Team. So again, we're a reserve military police battalion attached to the Army's 4th Infantry Division 2nd Combat Team, which is then tasked with securing the region around a town called Bakuba,
Okay.
which was about 90 kilometers north of Baghdad.
Okay.
Yeah. So it seemed to happen like overnight. Like,
Yeah.
we have no idea what we're doing. What are we doing here? We're just hanging out at like the Baghdad airport,
Yeah.
taking mortar fire every now
Sure.
and then.
Just a little bit. Just
and
a
then-
sprinkle of mortar
and then,
fire.
Yeah, and then it's just a sprinkle of mortar fire. And then, we got these orders. We're like, okay, tomorrow we're going to this other city. Nobody knew where it was.
Yeah.
And so when we arrived there, it was just an old airport, old airfield.
Yeah.
With nothing. It was just dirt and
Yeah.
nothing there. And our job was to build a base, right?
Yeah.
And so that for the most part, there's one little side story to this, but
Yeah.
for the most part, I spent the rest of 2003 at what we called Camp Warhorse,
Okay.
or Forward Operating Base Warhorse, outside the town of Bakuba in Iraq.
Okay.
So just on the edge of what later strategists would call the Sunni Triangle, right? As they sort of, were talking about, okay, what areas were most dangerous. I sort of didn't like that terminology, right? Because it made people's religion seem to be the thing that was most dangerous about them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Bakuba's it's actually, I don't know what the city's like now, but at the time it was a relatively mixed city. Okay, there were Shia
Yeah.
as well as Sunni, and not too far from the Iranian border.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was kind of all over Iraq for a short period of time. You were there longer than I was, but I was there September to like right at the beginning of December of 2003. I was at the Baghdad airport, but like we were riding helicopters all over the place, basically giving people training that they should have had before they got there. Is actually
No, that doesn't-
literally true. So I was a survival instructor. I was a survival, evasion, resistance, and escape specialist in the Air Force. Shout out to the rescue that just happened in Iran, which I hope we have time to talk about because you're an interesting. You have an intersection of experiences that I think informs. I'm curious for your thoughts, especially having been a military paralegal, being a religious scholar, looking at the intersection of Christianity and Islam. So I definitely want to talk about that. But I was just thinking about being in Iraq, and then we were giving people survival training basically in PowerPoint form that hadn't gotten it before they got there. Because like you're saying, like, there was whatever we were planning to happen. And
Right.
then there was just a whole lot of people in Iraq with varying levels of training for what they were being called upon to do. Because like you were saying with your unit, where this is our mission set, this is what we're trained on. And then like everybody in the military, well, there's this going on and your body's here in the area, so you're going to be doing this instead kind of thing.
Right.
And it may or may not be adjacent, to what you're doing. So you had things like when I was in Tikrit with the 4th ID, I was there. I don't know where Bakuba is, so I can't say exactly how close we were. But just outside Tikrit was FOB Spiker, Forward Operating Base Spiker, where the 4th Aviation Brigade was. That's where all the helos were. And we were doing basically giving their pilots rescue training and like, hey, if you get shot down, here's the procedure to call rescue in this area, and very similar to briefings that I'm sure that these gentlemen, got before they flew their mission in Iran. But it's exactly that of here's these frequencies and these are the authentication procedures and all that kind of stuff. But we were flying everywhere to give this training to people and then also do rescue planning coordination between units. So we were definitely chewing some of the same sand at certain points. I think it's
I think anybody who's been deployed, right, knows that this point that you're making well, I think here, which is that So there's the plan, right?
Yeah.
And then there's what happens.
Yeah.
And you just have to be willing to kind of roll with it, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I sort of missed in when I was sort of describing what we were sent out to Bakuba to do. So I said this was a unit that was trained for detention operations, but we were tasked with law and order operations afterwards, right? And so one of the most infamous decisions that the Coalition Provisional Authority made, this temporary government that the U.S. set up to facilitate the occupation, was to disband the army and the police force, right? Mm-hmm. The whole Iraqi army and police force. And so our unit was tasked at least partially with providing like police services for this town, for this city, right? But we didn't speak the language or know the culture. Like, the local police force had been disbanded, right? And there were like vendettas between people in the city, that we didn't know about. It was just a total mess, foobar,
Yeah.
They also at that time didn't seem to need they probably did need a legal advisor, but they didn't want to use me in that way. And so
I also want to point out, hold on just a second, in this situation where your unit is basically the police force for a town in a foreign country, in a completely different culture, where most of you probably speak less than 20 words of the language.
Yeah.
The commander's legal advisor was a how old E5 sergeant Army reservist?
22.
Right. Okay. So in this complex legal quagmire that the American foreign policy has dropped you into, you are now the legal advice, the smart one in the room when it comes to legal questions.
Well, and here's the thing: I wasn't even in the room, right? So our
of course not.
Our battalion commander didn't want to have anything because he looked at me, this green 22-year-old, right, and is like, I don't have any use for you.
Yeah.
I was sort of mad about that,
sure.
right? And I think I could have helped him see how some of the things he was doing legally were tenuous, let's just say. Okay, I don't want to get into anything too serious here, but so I was instead tasked with MP duties, right? So again, this is the other point that I wanted to make, is that everybody in the military, I'll just say in the Army, we used to joke, like, everybody, your first MOS, your first mission occupation specialty is infantry, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you carry a weapon and you could do that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I got MP training, with the MPs. And so I did some of that, right? I didn't do as much as, like, the formal MPs did, but I did some of the, guarding and patrols and things like this. But then the other thing that they had me do at a certain point was be involved in the team that was to hire a new police force.
Nice.
And so
now you're HR for the Iraqi police in Bakuba.
Yeah, in this occupied police station, which is regularly getting mortared, right?
Yeah.
In the middle of the town by, people on the outside. Like,
by the people who used to work in that building,
right.
probably.
Well, but then there were, but many of the people who were former police officers were trying to get their jobs back.
Sure.
And they gave us kind of a script of things to ask while we were interviewing these people. And one of the things that they had us ask was, have you ever been a member of the Ba'ath Party? So the Ba'ath Party, the Ba'ath Party is, was the official ruling party of Iraq, right? Under Saddam and before. And if you had a government job, you had to be a member of that. So they sort of look at you for a second, and you had to ask this question, right?
Yeah.
Because it was part of the script that was given to us to ask. And they'd look at you, and they'd be like, some of them would come.
What do you want me to say?
Right, exactly. What do you want me to say? Some of them would look at you like, and actually tell you, like, we had to, like this was, and others, they look at you for a second, and they'd be like, no, because they're guessing like that's the right answer. But anybody who knew anything about Iraq, right?
Yeah,
could have helped the CPA, the Coalition Provisional Authority, understand this, right? Like, this is a bad idea. You can't just purge an entire group, like the most trained people, right? From this service. So, and it ended up being like, we'd have translators working with us who'd be like, this is my son who's like 16. You should hire him. And the police officer. Again, yeah. So thank you for pointing out. I'm 22.
Yeah.
What are we doing? What
Yeah.
am I doing? We didn't know. We
Yeah.
didn't know. We're just taking it one day at a time. Okay, the orders are this today. There's something else tomorrow.
Yeah. It's crazy. I remember that time looking back now as well, even 10 years ago, looking back as a about to retire master sergeant, looking back at my 22-year-old self. No, 24. I turned 24 in Iraq, or just after I got back. But, looking back at myself and how dumb I was. I thought I would have told you at the time that I knew exactly what I was doing and what I was supposed to be doing. And because I was in a weird position of being like a subject matter expert in a very niche thing that either didn't matter or was vital. It was a mission that everybody knew they had to plan for, but was unlikely, right? So it's like, what's the actual chances? But then as soon as it happens, it's, oh my God, what did that guy say? It's that kind of thing.
What was
right?
on that PowerPoint?
What was on the, oh my God. And so you had either captive audiences or people who like could not, depending on which side of that question they were on, of like, yeah, I get it, but it's not likely, versus like, oh my God, But yeah, it was funny of like, going around and trying to affect change, because I remember one interaction I had with a full bird colonel, and this is going to be really inside baseball, but it was about an authentication thing with like, okay, if you get shot down, there's a number of the week, right? Of like, it's in the thing and it's secret, right? But it's like a thing that we can use if I'm on the radio and I'm talking to you to make sure that you're who you say you are. What's the sum of the digits of the number of the week, and you can authenticate and, whatever. And this unit, instead of using the one for the theater that every rescue force would know, were using the last two digits of their tail number as their own like rescue thing, right? And so anyway, it was basically like, I understand your logic, sir, but you're cutting, like you're just do it my way, right? Like, this is the whole architecture of the entire theater, and then you have your own little slice of it. It was one of those, it was like, I'm right and you're wrong, but I'm an E5 and you're a colonel, and it's his unit, so he's going to do whatever he wants to do. And I'm like, roger that, sir. Can I borrow your phone? And I called my boss, which was back at Al Udeid at the Air Operations Center, and he worked for a 2-star general. And so I called him, and about 5 minutes later, that colonel was screaming for me to come back into his office, because I don't know who finally called him, but it was somebody who told him he was going to do what I said to do. And it was one of those, like, one of my favorite moments in the military, and also one of the moments where I think I actually came the closest to truly getting my ass kicked.
Yeah.
But as an E5, to make a colonel that angry and get away with it is actually a pretty sweet.
That's something else.
It's a sweet moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't come along often, and you got to savor them when they do. See, this is one of those rambles I was talking about. But my original point was like, I was this 24-year-old running around Iraq with no supervision. I just told you I called my boss, who was in a whole other country thousands of miles away.
Right.
So I was a 24-year-old E5, and I had another 24-year-old E5 working with me.
Yeah.
And we were responsible for the entire country of Iraq, right? For like PR plan, everything. I could just go out to the airfield and talk to a pilot and be like, I need to go to Tikrit. And then they would, not that like they had to do what I said, but I'd have to bum a ride. But I could just get on a helicopter and go fly somewhere. It was crazy to me looking back as a master sergeant.
The responsibility.
Who thought that kid?
Yeah.
Which on paper I did. I was a highly trained professional, but it was just like, it's crazy.
Tell me about it. I know. I mean, looking back, I'm thinking about myself and then the guys I was with. Like, we're all babies.
Yeah.
I had no idea about the country, the culture, the situation. It's wild to me. Yeah, looking back now on it, who thought this was a good idea?
Yeah. The thing that I think that I learned, because we're about the same age, we had kind of that similar, coming of age in terms of like the sweep of history that you and I have seen, right? From one of my, like, I remember the Challenger disaster and, 9/11 and, COVID. You know what I mean? Like, you've seen like, and so going from born in the late 70s, growing up in the 80s, right? So I was both my grandfathers did 20 years in the military, and then my dad did 20 years in the military.
Okay.
And then I grew up in the 80s with Rocky beating Ivan Drago, and, we won the Cold War, for God's sake, when I was in junior high school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we were the good guys, they were the bad guys, and then we won. And then to see that, to 9/11, to everything we've done since then, right? And the way the world has changed. And then understanding what was missing from that story, or my understanding of that story when I was a kid in the 80s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all that history that a lot of people fear, right? Like an accurate telling of history of this country and world history. And it's not all, if you're the good guy in every story, you're probably not getting the full story.
It's probably a cartoon.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. Okay, so I don't know if this is going to make it because there's a bunch of stuff I want to talk about too. But last year for Veterans Day, I went to my kids' elementary school Veterans Day assembly.
Yeah.
Right. Which is always Veterans Day is a weird day for me for a lot of reasons. But I'm at this assembly and it happened so fast I didn't quite understand it, but there was a cartoon, and I think we started in the elementary school cafeteria, and then all of a sudden, before I knew it was happening, somehow a chicken nugget, like a cartoon chicken nugget, was explaining World War II at like a second grade level history understanding, right? On Veterans Day. And I just couldn't, even now, as you can hear, I don't have the words to describe how weird it was. But then I realized in that moment, sitting in the multipurpose room at my kids' elementary school, that's the understanding that most people have of history, right? Like you get the cartoon version in elementary school.
Right.
And then hopefully later classes give you more nuance or whatever. But for the most part, you get that flag-waving, simplistic, because it has to be simple to teach it to kids. You get the simple story, and then, okay, well, I know where the good, and then any nuance, I think, is hard to parse out, right? So when you have that like cartoon understanding of your country's history, you lack a definite understanding of life. So I think of that a lot when that chicken nugget talking about World War II, when I see, what's going on.
Yeah. Well, and the sad thing is that chicken nugget talking about World War II probably knows more about World War II than a lot of people do, right? And the scary thing is perhaps even more than people that are in positions of power, who again are just, they sort of lack the nuance, right? And nuance is a good word here, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what helps you to be able to see the gray and to be able to ask questions, to be critical and learn from the past can help you not make the same mistakes in the future, right? Yeah. And I don't know if we're going to get to this, but we are, in my viewpoint, we're making those mistakes now.
Yeah. No, I agree. You know what? We can talk about it right now, actually. So let me just sort of set this up. So you are an Army veteran. You were paralegal. You have firsthand experience at the tactical level of administering U.S. foreign policy, basically.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but yeah.
But at the tactical level, right? So, and this is the thing. Right. So just to differentiate for you, but like I worked at headquarters. Later in my career, I got to be a little higher rank than you were, and so you have that
quite a bit higher
strategic level, right? Yeah. Which is supposedly, but it's the overarching strategy.
Yeah.
Which hopefully we have one. And then the operational level, which is at the unit level, basically, battalions and stuff that actually operationalize that strategy. And then you have the maneuver units that are tactically. So when I say that you're tactically administering foreign policy, what I mean is some suit in a room decides we're going to not let anybody who is in the Ba'ath Party have a job in Iraq.
Right.
And then you're the guy in the office looking at Iraqis who are having to do. That's what I'm talking about, right?
I see.
That's what I mean when I say tactical level, because that's the thing I think. Well, that's one of many things I think that are lacking in this planning, because obviously we're talking around and about Iran. We're talking about Iraq, our experiences in Iraq, but we're talking about Iran, where to me, I also have a degree in international relations, and so I've worked at my highest level headquarters position or anything in the military. I was at Special Operations Command Pacific, so the headquarters for all the special operations in the whole Pacific and East and Asian region, right? And I was the personnel recovery manager, so just a staff member in that headquarters, right? Okay. But so I got to be in the room where a lot of smart people were talking. Usually I had no speaking role, but I got to be in the room, right? So like in the movies where you see like the general and he's like in the ops and like launch the bombers. Like I was one of those guys like at
sitting in
a
the
desk,
corner,
right? Like waiting for a plane to get shot down, so I had a job, right? But so I got to be in that, like, so I got to like Admiral McCraven was running SOCOM when I was subordinate to that. So so just listening to people talk and stuff. So when I hear in 2012, when I was there, colonels describing what would happen if we went to Iran, right? And then seeing it now, 12 years later, 13 years later, I know those colonels, like if colonels knew it in 2012, I know generals knew it in 2026. And it's literally exactly, because it's the Strait of Hormuz, right? It's like a geopolitical choke point. There's a whole... Yeah, the way this has played out has been extremely predictable, and the only people who seem surprised are the people
running it,
in charge of making these decisions.
Right.
So you, as a person with experience with military law, deployment experience, you're a religious scholar as well, right? So you're traveled in the region, you're familiar with the cultures, because it's not just one, right? It's not like a monolithic thing. I'm just curious, like from your perspective, however you want to enter the question, like what do you think about what's happening right now?
Wow. Okay.
I mean, I might have given that too broad.
Well, as you said, there's so many ways to enter into that question. I've been talking about this in my classes, right, and with my students, right, and prefacing it with with the statement that I'm coming at this as a veteran of the Iraq War, right, of a war of choice that we don't all of us who are veterans, we don't all agree on its assessment, but here's my assessment, right, is that it was largely a disaster for us, for Iraq, right, for the region. It set off all kinds of impacts, right, including created the conditions for the rise of ISIS and sort of all this stuff, right? I'm looking at it from that perspective, and I'm seeing another war of choice, right? This one even less thought out.
Right. At least George Bush had the decency to spend 18 months lying to America
That's
to
right.
get us to believe in the war.
Indeed, the decency to lie to us about it.
But I think that is a fun. Like we're joking, we're laughing, but the fact
he
that
went to the UN,
gone from lying
the
country into a war and lying our allies into a war, which is bad enough,
right,
to a position where the president doesn't even have to bother to lie anymore.
But it does seem like we at least the folks that are making the decisions now, they learned the wrong lesson.
Yeah.
So the lesson that I think maybe you and I would wish them to learn would be like, maybe don't get involved in an open-ended, objectiveless conflict, right? This sort of imagine like you're going to overthrow this regime or whatever. Yeah. Like, don't do that. Take seriously, weigh the risks. It seems like the lesson they learned was, Bush's problem was that he tried to rally people to support. Don't even try to do that, right? Let's just go. But I don't want to lose this point before we move on or whatever. And that is, as we're sitting here today, the president has been making a number of very serious threats. To escalate this war in Iran, specifically saying that he's going to engage in what is almost assuredly war crimes. Right. Bombing civilian infrastructure. Power plants, for example, perhaps even water treatment facilities. These are essential for life, right? For people. And so, yes, some might say, well, okay, but if they're being used like a dual purpose to support military actions or so on, but if you extend the point that like, okay, any power plant, right, could possibly be used to provide energy for military use. I mean, you could just you could do them all. So again, just to back up, here's what I see, right, is that our president is openly threatening war crimes. And already what is by international law an illegal war. So on the legal grounds, right, is in many ways so much worse than Iraq, it seems to me, right? Now on the practical grounds, the war in Iraq lasted a very long time and created a lot of, again, chaos. I mean, hundreds of thousands of deaths. I'm really undershooting it, but lots.
Yeah.
So there's that, and of course, as a scholar of religion and culture in the region, and just somebody coming at it from a humanitarian perspective. Generally, people in Iran, Iranian citizens, not all of them, but many of them despise the regime. But when you start attacking civilians and the infrastructure that supports civilian life, they may hate the regime. But what makes you think they're going to rise up and try to overthrow this government or support you? There's a sort of rally around the flag thing that happens. It's just gotten to the point where whatever the reasons for doing this at the beginning, it seems like this administration and this president, they're just so angry that they keep escalating and escalating. Right? They're like, why aren't the Iranians capitulating? And it's moving us into some extraordinarily dangerous territory.
Yeah.
And I mean, the idea that we would, again, threaten cities and cultural sites and all kinds of things. It's wild. It's wild. And so we're sitting here on Tuesday, April 7th, and who knows if he's going to go through this, but Trump has threatened by 8 p.m. Eastern time, right? If the Iranians don't capitulate to the point that he thinks is adequate, and who knows what that is, he's going to start going after civilian infrastructure, right?
Yeah. Well, and so for me, as not obviously I wasn't on the legal side of the military, but understanding the law of armed conflict, and because we all got trained in that, and understanding legal and illegal orders and things like that. Again, we get back to that. For me, that E5 at the broken end of the bottle of American foreign policy, right? Mm-hmm. Where it shouldn't be up to that kid to refuse an illegal order, right? Yeah. Because by the time it gets to him, it's not an illegal order anymore. You understand? You know what I mean? Because the lieutenant telling him to do something is giving him a legal order based on, an illegal order that a general got. The fact that the war is happening, and this is another where, laws can be debated or whatever. I'm just assuming Trump gives that order, right? And it's like, we're going to start bombing civilian infrastructure. We're going to, all these things. At some point, somebody wearing a uniform has to tell him no, and maybe that's already happened because we have a Southcom commander who's not the Southcom commander anymore. As we're
one wonders,
blowing up drug boats and kidnapping heads of state and all those sorts of things. Like this administration in the last year and change since they've been in, they have purged a lot of military leadership, and even less below the headline, but if you know what you're looking at, and they've also purged a lot in key positions in terms of the JAG Corps, inspectors general, the exact sorts of positions whose job it is to keep the military on the right side of these things.
Right.
Have been the targeted, like the JAG Corps got gutted within the first couple months.
Right.
Just a lot of. And again,
because this is where you would expect the opposition to come from, right? I mean, this is where you expect the voices that would tell you, no, you actually can't do this, right?
Right.
And so, that's a very thought out strategy, right? Which I'm sure you're sort of getting to, right? I mean, and we're seeing the ramifications of that now, right? So there aren't people in those key positions that are, at least that we know of, that are at this point saying absolutely not. We shouldn't have done this from the beginning. We can't escalate it in this way.
Yeah.
But I do want to, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do want to push back on just one thing, that everyone who wears the uniform is obliged to disobey an illegal order.
Yeah.
Right? Including the private, the 18-year-old private or 17-year-old or whatever. As unlikely as that would be, right? And so to maybe take it from the scale of war, but just to, one of the real black marks of the Iraq War was torture.
Yeah. Right.
Used in U.S.-run, Allied-run detention facilities, right? And so we saw what happened, whether it was Abu Ghraib and other places, right? When all the way down either it was sort of winked out above, but all the way down the line, folks got the message that, oh, this is okay, right?
Right.
You can do this sort of stuff. But we also have examples of people saying no, right?
Right.
So, but if you don't have a military culture that rewards honesty and courage, right?
Yeah.
But instead incentivizes loyalty and careerism, than the very check that the military is supposed to be. Now, the military is not supposed to take over, right?
Right.
But when it comes to moments like this, the military has a legitimate check, and that is to say, no, I can't.
Yeah.
Like a general, a colonel, a captain, a sergeant, right?
Yeah.
No, I cannot follow this order.
Yeah.
Here's why, and let the chips fall where they may. That is the courage that we don't have. For all the talk in the Pentagon these days about lethality or warrior ethos or all this stuff, what we lack is the courage. It seems like there's a real lack of courage to say no, right?
Yeah.
To stand up against lawlessness, immorality. I mean these things are wrong. They're just wrong. And again, if we were learning the lessons from Iraq and Afghanistan, we'd be very careful to sort of strengthen that culture. But I'm afraid that now it's been weakened to such an extent that, I mean, clearly this administration and this president see the military's only job as to execute his orders. Yeah. Right. It's just a tool. Right. As opposed to a thoughtful and at times necessary, check or question. Right. Is this what we should be doing? Like, you mentioned. What about the Strait of Hormuz? Like, people knew about this. Yeah.
It's
even if you take away like. And we shouldn't, but let's just say for the sake of argument, we take away the moral question, the legal question. Again, there's also the tactical question.
Yeah, it was just dumb.
It was just dumb, right? But you don't get the necessary pushback if you've eradicated that culture of honesty and courage. Yeah.
Well, and I think from a strategic, I keep using that word, and it's hard to say it with a straight face in in the context of this administration, but like, I genuinely think the lesson that I thought we had learned in Iraq and Afghanistan, and Pete Hegseth, who's the most unqualified human being on the planet, but the one thing he said repeatedly that I agree with is basically the critique of the stupidity of these regime change wars. Right? Until a year ago, that's what the MAGA thing was, right? Like, it was that we were dumb for getting involved in these wars and all that kind of stuff. So to see those exact people do, because I genuinely think that in Afghanistan and certainly in Iraq, we as Americans thought, okay, we knock off this guy or this regime or whatever, and democracy and freedom springs up like the grass, right? Like, it's just the natural. And
this was the neocon,
right? Exactly. And this is
vision.
And I was kind of getting at this earlier when I was talking about being that 24-year-old staff sergeant who thought he knew what he was doing. Yeah, I believed it. Like, it was like, the whole problem is Saddam Hussein. So once he's gone, then naturally, because folks is folks, and we're just. And I understand now, having seen how that played out in Afghanistan and how that ended and all that, like, that doesn't work. Like, you can't just go into somebody else's country and just impose your will without a lot of violence, right? Like, and even then, it's like you can only impose your will like as long as you're willing to be violent, right? Whereas like World War II, there wasn't a lack of freedom. Or, you know what I mean? It was like Hitler was the problem. He'd invaded these countries once we cleared them out. And then, I think generations of Americans thought that was the model, or you kill the tyrant and everything is good. And then we see that that's not how that works.
Yeah, but Europe was devastated.
Right. Exactly. Not that World War II is a model for
Germany was destroyed.
Right. But that's the lesson for Iraq and Afghanistan is like, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. That the neocon thing does not work. It would be great. I would love it. It's the same as like,
not without extreme sacrifice. And and that's the sort of lie that we're being sold now. If we're being sold a lie at all, right, is that we have all this capacity to change things on the ground with minimal sacrifice.
And this is what I mean when I say, like, I thought that Hegseth and MAGA had learned, that's the lesson they'd learned, which was like, at least they get one thing right, is that those regime change wars don't work, and it's not worth it to us in blood and treasure to go halfway around the world to try to affect regime change. So it's that. But I genuinely think that Trump was convinced by people around him, or maybe he just decided all on his own. But I think that he thought, like, if Khamenei was gone, all these popular protests that, the people would take to the streets, and democracy was exactly what we thought would happen in Iraq and Afghanistan that didn't happen. Right. It didn't happen for a host of reasons. It didn't happen here, and it's not going to happen here. And then, you kind of alluded to earlier, the regime has been anti-American, and the people might be against the regime, but practically the rising up is far-fetched for a bunch of reasons. And now I think we've given them, the younger generation who does not remember American intervention in Iran previous to 1979, right? I was born in 1978.
Yeah, 53, right.
I don't have a living memory of it, but I understand.
You know the history,
From 1954 to 1979, I understand how we got from there to there, and how we got from 1979 to here. So I think that notion of the Iranian people, the younger generation who doesn't understand, they hate the regime's anti-American, they don't understand why the regime would be anti-American, and now I think they do, right? Because they're seeing the boot of American foreign policy, right? Which is what the Iranian regime, that's their shtick, right? And I mean, it's grounded in a reality, right? Like we have been meddling in that region since we've been a country, really. I mean, if you consider the Barbary pirates as part of the
I was
Middle
wondering
East.
if you were going to go there.
Yeah.
The shores of Tripoli.
Yeah. Oh man. There's But so it's that notion of having the historical context.
Right.
I think that Donald Trump thinks that he can just threaten people with tariffs and the U.S. military and that they will buckle. And I think up until this point, pretty much in his life, he has always gotten away with it, right? I mean, he was born on third base, but whatever it is, he's managed to come out on top. So if I were Donald Trump, I would also believe that there was nothing I couldn't do. Right? Like, because that's been his life experience of he can bully people. He's had the money and the lawyers to basically enforce his will or whatever. And whether that makes him a shrewd businessman or a con man depends on what color hat you wear, I guess. But he's been that guy. And then he became the president of the United States by being that guy. Right?
Twice,
so why would you ever stop being that guy?
Right.
And now I think he's finally gotten to a point where, like with the Iranian regime, where it doesn't behave.
Right.
And even with Venezuela, that fits a narrative of, I guess, I saw General Mattis talking about, I think it was General Mattis talking about this just the other day, about Stanley McChrystal. He was talking about the misconceptions of leaders in terms of like, we could just bomb people and then they'll capitulate, or the special operations strike. And what we're seeing militarily is tactically and operationally victorious, but there's no strategic change, right? So that's the issue is like, we're winning. Why aren't you quitting? And it's, you know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. But I think he's finally run up against a thing where you can't just... Yeah. And that's what we're seeing with these ultimatums is like, this is what he does. He says, you'll do this or else. Yeah. And then people fold or his lawyers, whatever, or, but that's been his experience. And even losses, he just tumbles into a win. It's like Biff Tannen and Forrest Gump rolled into one, right? It's ridiculous, and he's running the country.
But like you said, there's no strategy. I know you keep saying, I keep using this word, but it's a good word because I think with him generally there isn't a strategy, right? Everything is sort of just reactive, right?
Right.
You react, you have an impulse, and you sort of go this way. There's no like, what exactly is winning here? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because if it's overthrowing the Islamic Republic, that takes, that's going to take like massive amounts of ground troops and many years, decades, and it's going to create chaos around the region. That doesn't sound like winning. Yeah. If winning is that you get a bunch of people to come out on the streets to oppose the government like happened before, but you know what? The last time that happened, like tens of thousands of them were slaughtered, right? Yeah. And if we're not really going to do anything to support but bomb from above, they're going to get slaughtered again. That doesn't sound like winning. Yeah. Is winning just like forcing open the Strait of Hormuz so that some oil gets through? Which was already open. Which was already open, but we don't care now about the mess that we created for these, 90 million people or something? Yeah. That doesn't sound like winning. Like, what exactly is the vision of victory here? So that's one question. But for me, also the concern is, how can we stop doing this? Right. Right? because it's Iran today, but tomorrow it's going to be somebody else.
Yeah.
And you would have thought, like, with the fiasco of Afghanistan, of Iraq, with all the things that the MAGA movement said about, no more endless, aimless wars, we were learning lesson. I don't know that people were arguing against them, even if they disagree with everything else MAGA stood for.
Yeah.
But we haven't learned the lesson. So that's my concern, is like, what's the end here?
Yeah, I think there's no strategy because they genuinely thought it was like a one-move checkmate. Oh, Israel's going to take the leader out in the first moment, and then it's all going to be gravy. And then it wasn't, and it was like, oh.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're seeing in real time is the strategy was like, oh, we'll do this and it'll work, and then
right. Because it happened in Venezuela, or it's sort of, something worked in Venezuela.
Right.
But the other thing that we haven't sort of really talked about, though, is the importance of historical knowledge and expertise, cultural expertise, right? Political expertise, right? You have to understand these regions, right? And sort of what's more likely and less likely. And Iran is not Maduro's Venezuela.
Yeah.
It's not. And if this administration was willing to listen to experts who are going to say things that go against what they already want to do, they would hear these things, right? But they don't. I mean, if you just want sycophants, if you just want people who are going to, you've made up your mind and they're going to just execute orders, then we're going to keep having this, right?
Yeah.
These mistakes. It's going to happen again.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. We have a system of government that's supposed to also like check this stuff.
Well, and that's the other. I think this is what I was getting at earlier when I lost my train of thought. I've been so. The problem with Trump for me is that, I mean, obviously he's the worst person in the world to hold that office, but it's that we've spent at least my adult life dismantling any check on the presidency.
Yeah, right.
So it's the office of the presidency itself that we have on purpose and for several good reasons, but each one is moved us further away from the design of our government. But the president has almost unlimited power in foreign policy, apparently, right? We've seen twice now he can knock off a head of state, he can go kidnap a head of state, and he can start a complete war without any sort of support from Congress. Like, forget about that Congress hasn't told him no. It's that the whole, Congress declares war. Well, we don't declare war anymore, right? So that's been 100 years in the making.
Yeah.
And then you have all these emergency powers that we've given the president, and he has the power to decide what constitutes an emergency. And the courts have decided that, especially in wide swaths of his power, he doesn't really have any, he does enjoy legal immunity.
Yeah.
Right. So he can pretty much do whatever he wants in broad areas with the military and with the foreign policy and with the government, and he can't be prosecuted for it later. So forget about Trump for a minute. It's just the system that we have created.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Now, if we have if it's not the person with the most integrity on the planet, like, it's too much power.
Yeah.
Like, and so there has to be aggressive checks. Like, Congress and the executive are supposed to be adversarial.
Right.
The House of Representatives and the Senate are supposed to be adversarial, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the judiciary, which is supposed to be calling balls and strikes to make sure that everything is on the up and up. And we don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
And the problem with Trump is that he's just the first one, like we were saying earlier, who's not bothering to lie. He's not bothering to, we're fighting for freedom, or we're doing. I mean, he's in a lot of cases, he's just nakedly saying the thing out loud, and there's no one who really can stop him.
Right.
It would take such an enormous act of will by 535 members of Congress to check the power of one 80-year-old toddler who's ruled by his id. It's
right.
So this is the system we've created.
Right.
And my concern is, assuming we get to have another presidential election, and assuming that election doesn't result in a third term for this person, and that we get to have a separate president from the one we currently have at some point in the future, my concern is that you get like a President Gavin Newsom who then, not that I don't, whatever you think about politics, but that you get a Democrat in there who, instead of going, wow, guys, that was a close one. Let's spend some time reworking how our government functions to assure that that doesn't happen again.
And I think that's the most likely scenario, right?
I honestly think that that's not going to happen. I think the next person's going to get in there, and it's going to be like, not that we're going to have like more wars or whatever, but just in terms of like the president's power.
No, exactly. No, I 100% agree with you that the problem is structural.
Yeah.
And that what the most likely scenario is that you'll get a Democrat in there or even another Republican or whatever, but that will just not do anything about the structural issues because it's, you want this power, you want the efficiency of it, right? But as you said, you use the word, our system is supposed to be adversarial. Agreed. It's also supposed to be inefficient.
Yes.
It's supposed to be hard to go to war.
Yes.
Right? And so absolutely, I 100% agree. I think the focus on the threat of Trump is missing all the things that you said, which is that we have, instead of protecting the box that we put the president in, right? All the sort of the framework that limits his authority, we've been freeing, right? Yeah. Freeing that office. And so the long-term solution is to put up guardrails on the presidency.
Well, and I think it really takes
the constitutional guardrails back.
Congress reasserting their congressional powers of because at this point in the situation that we had in Venezuela and now we have in Iran is by the time Congress got to vote, it was like, well, do you want to stop funding the troops? Right?
Right.
Like that's the choice Congress got to make. Hey, we're at war. Do you want to fund it or not?
Right.
Rather than, hey, guys, do you think we should go to war? Maybe let's not. Maybe let's take a beat. Right. So it's that of like it's going to, and this president's already been impeached twice. Right. And we're one executive order away from the midterms not like changing anything. So it's insane to me that we've gotten where we are. I think about, in fact, I wrote my congressman this very morning about the thing that you brought up about the ultimatums and threats of war crimes. And the way I signed that off was, I need you to call me and tell me what you're doing to check this president, or I need you to tell me to my face that I spent 20 years defending nothing. Because I genuinely feel that's where we're at. Whatever you feel about the Iranian regime or any of that, or whatever you feel about Maduro or any of that. Yeah. It's this structural stuff that we're talking about. The fact that one person can do it. Right. And we just have to assume that since he's the president, it's right. I guess is how that's like. He's not the Pope. We didn't elect the Pope. Like, right? It's
although he did create that AI image of himself as the Pope. Do you remember that? After
I had to.
He posted it on social media.
It's
unbelievable.
It's crazy to me. And I have friends that I have people that I'm very close to that voted for Trump.
Sure,
twice.
As do I.
And people that I respect. And I actually, to a certain extent, especially back in 2016, less or so this last time, but I understand where they're coming from in terms of their reasonings for that vote, right? Especially if you buy into the like, well, you only have two choices, but we'll set that aside for a different podcast. But so like I understand the logic that brings somebody to vote for Trump over Kamala Harris, like regardless of whatever. I understand it. Well, I didn't vote for Harris either. But it's just interesting to me that anybody can continue to look at the day-to-day and go, that's my guy. And again, like separating out the actual things that he's doing, just like scroll that feed of like his Truth Social or whatever. Look at the things that the White House posts on social media, right? Just or any of the things he says. You look at that and you go, that's a leader, right? Like that's the thing. And back in 2016 when it was the Republican debate and there was like 20 people on that stage, right? When it was the early days of the primary and he was just one guy. Yeah. And you just like, I mean, not that I was really that jazzed about any of those candidates, but it's like, you listen to that guy and you're like, that's who I want to, that's who I think of as a leader. Like it's just insane to me. He's like standing next to the Easter Bunny talking about war crimes. Like we've become a parody of ourselves. And I genuinely think, and it goes back to that chicken nugget. I think that, I think
Chicken Nugget 2028.
Well,
That's
but
my,
it's that notion of like, so you have that elementary school understanding of America's history and what America is and what America stands for, right?
Yeah.
And so you have that elementary school understanding of what could never happen here.
Mm-hmm.
So then
Right.
when it starts happening,
Right.
but we know that it could never.
Right.
So since it could never, it can't possibly be, even though everything in front of my face is telling me it's happening. I've known since I was in elementary school that it can't happen here.
Right.
So you're being silly with all of your
Right.
Trump derangement syndrome and no king's protests and basic understanding of the Constitution and
Right.
cultural awareness. Like that's the thing that I just can't wrap my head around.
Yeah, and this is a whole other podcast. But the other thing is, though, it's not that people are paying attention to it and then saying, I think, oh, it can't happen here. I don't think they're paying attention to it, right? So the information fragmentation of our society means that whether you're sort of spending all your time on social media or not, we're in different information ecosystems.
Yeah.
Right? So when I talk to the people in my life that are even at this moment kind of avid Trump supporters, we're not even talking about the same person.
Right.
Right? So the information that they're getting is how unfair the critique is of him. He's standing up against, all these, he's protecting us, right? Immigration, whatever. I mean, we're not even having this. There's no, what are you talking about? War crimes, right? Like he's fighting against a fanatic, they'll say he's fighting against a fanatical regime that wants to attack us with nuclear weapons. Now, keep in mind, Iran does not have nuclear weapons, right?
Well, and if you also remember, we completely destroyed their nuclear capability mere months ago, according to Trump.
We did. But again, but the information ecosystem that these people I'm talking about are in is not the same one, right?
Yeah.
So, again, as we're talking about big structural issues, right? There's like the institutions, right? The political institutions and what they need. But there's also the third estate, right?
Yeah.
There is the media, right? And there's the fact that we have lost a common set of facts upon which we can then assess, and we can disagree on how to interpret those. But we've lost that. Again, just to reiterate the point, when I talk to people who I'm very close with who support Trump, the person that they're talking about is not the person I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a wild time to be alive. It's a weird time to be alive.
Yeah.
This was a very interesting conversation. I'm going to have trouble because my intent, like I said, I figured we'd talk for about an hour or so, and then I'd trim it down to like 20 or 30 minutes. But I don't really. I mean, I want to hang on to a lot of that. So, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out what the podcast is. So it might, the first episode I did with Matt Laramie, who runs the Veterans Center over there.
Yeah.
And we talked for about an hour and 15 minutes, and I'm trimming that down to 10 for the assignment because that's what the assignment is. But I was figuring on also editing it down to about a 30-minute like actual episode for. And so I was kind of like looking at that as the time. But yeah, that's I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna spend some time trying to figure out.
I guess what really the question that it's like, do you want this to be a podcast that talks about like veterans' experiences or veterans' thoughts on current on the current war and the state of America?
It's interesting. So like, and we may actually have to come back and do like an episode.
There's like
3.
there's almost like two parts to this conversation.
Because it's both. Because this was absolutely something I wanted to talk to you about. I just didn't realize how in depth we were going to go. I was really, like, I'm loving it. But yeah, it was definitely, that was my 10th question was going to be like the. What do you think about it? Like that was going to be the like, what's your thought on current events kind of thing.
Yeah, so, we just went there immediately.
Well, I mean, but I think it was a good conversation. I think it's good stuff. And it's interesting because I know that kind of bringing it back to the veteran experience and like being here on campus and the intent for the podcast is being the old guy on campus or one of the old guys kicking around campus and, being here. I feel that kind of separation.
Yeah.
And then just being a veteran in America, which is another whole topic of conversation, but I'm interested in kind of bridging that gap between civilians and veterans, sort of doing that here by highlighting because I think, and this may just be my sense, but it seems to me that like civilians have like a picture of like what a veteran is, right? So like, I mean, one, there's the stereotype of, you know, PTSD and the, you know, the broken combat vet, which is like the only thing you see in movies or whatever. And so highlighting that like that's not everyone's experience, and that's not even most of the veteran experience, right? Because combat arms actually only makes up, you know, a very small part of the military.
Yeah.
And then, you know, a lot of people, you know, they didn't deploy or maybe they served during peacetime or you know. So the fact that veterans aren't a monolith and the fact that we don't all think the same, you know, because I think a lot of people have the impression that veterans are pro-war, you know, because there we were in the military. And I find especially our generation of veteran has become decidedly anti-war for a lot of the reasons we've talked about, because we've seen firsthand, you know, this is what we were sold, this is how it played out, and now with the, you know, with the benefit of 25 years looking back at the whole sweep, it's like, oh, I understand now how, you know, just like we talked about 1954 and 79 in Iran, like understanding how our history in Iraq led to this situation and how Russia and Ukraine affects Iran and China and how it's, you know, all interconnected and all that stuff. But just, but that understanding of that veterans have different viewpoints and, and also, and we didn't really get into this, the juxtaposition of, you were a reservist for you know, a period of enlistment. It was a part of your life. It was the thing that obviously shaped you, and then you went on to do other things, which is the part we didn't get to. But like, you know, and then that brought you around here to Gonzaga,
right?
And so that arc, I probably want to have you back to talk a little bit more. But like that arc of you know, the military to Gonzaga, right? Of that connection. Because for me, it was a career, and it was the family business basically that I joined, and then I did a career. It shaped my entire adult life, and so for me, it was a very big part. For you, it was a shorter part, but obviously impactful. And so that notion of the road not taken, but also just the difference in you know. My brother was in the Army Reserves in peacetime in Texas, and it was just a lark and fun, and he got money for college, and it was great, and you know, learned a lot, shaped him, and all
which
that
is
kind
what
of stuff.
I was hoping for.
Right, which is the experience that you. When I joined, I mean, it was the same time frame. I joined in 1996, and then, you know, peacetime, and then 9/11 happened, and it was like, oh, here we go, you know. But for me, and not that I was in a combat job, but like I grew up on G.I. Joe, and it was like I was stoked. Not that we had been attacked, but, you know, it's like you join the military, you want to do the thing, you know. Like but yeah, just having that that experience and seeing how vast the veteran community is, and varied, and so that was really the intent. And so I think the notion of this 22-year-old sergeant, you know, in northern Iraq who became a religious scholar looking at things that are happening in Iran, I mean, I think that's
it's wild.
So I don't know how much time we get. Well, you got to slide out of here, but we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Yeah, I got to get out of here. I'm getting waved out. But, all right. We'd run over our studio time a little bit, so we had a bit of an abrupt ending there. But we're going to bring Brian back for another episode as soon as we can get him back in the studio. But stay tuned for further episodes of the Vets Are Zags podcast. And if you know any vets or you are a vet who is interested in coming on and chatting with me about your experience in the military and life here at Gonzaga, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find me in the Gonzaga Global, Piper at zagmail.gonzaga.edu. Look forward to talking with more vets in the future. Thanks very much.